everybody's got a soft heart somewhere in there. So we would try to reach it by through images and through exercises. And like you said, if we could teach them how to reach that part of themselves on their own, and they find it rewarding and not boring, then yeah, we are changing, literally changing the circuits in their brain, and that is very cool.
You're listening to Relish This, the Purpose Marketing Podcast. Here's your host, Stu Swineford.
Hey everybody, my guest today is Julia Keller, and she is one of the founders of Mindful Youth Institute. And they do a lot of really great work, or are teeing things up to do a lot of really great work with bullying and trying to make adjustments to kids' behaviors so that if they're exhibiting bullying behavior, they can help those kids get on a different path. And it's really important work. It's really great work and hard work. And they just started. So they're really still trying to figure everything out in terms of the audience engagement cycle. And we talked about everything from persona development all the way through to really this bond phase where you're really trying to build relationships. And if you've heard me say anything, it's that marketing is all about building relationships. And this episode is jam-packed with ideas and information on how you and your organization can do that. And Julia was just a lot of fun to talk to. And I hope you enjoy this episode. Here we go. Julia, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself, Stu?
I'm doing great. It is a little bit of a cloudy day up here in the high country, but it's nice to get a little extra snow. This episode will air, I think, in June, so hopefully it'll be a little warmer by the time this shows up in public.
Yeah, it'll probably be a lot warmer in June.
I hope so. Where are you located?
In Pueblo.
Okay, down in Pueblo. Awesome. Yeah. I haven't been to Pueblo in quite some time, but it's a really cool community. My stepsister lives down in that area, actually.
Oh yeah, where does she live?
Yeah. I think she lives on the west side of Pueblo. She's in the medical field, so she does like X-ray tech stuff and imaging. And I know that she works a lot in Canyon City, and then some of the other facilities kind of in the Pueblo area.
Yeah, well, we live in Pueblo West.
Okay.
So west of where your sister lives. Pueblo West is a pretty nice place.
Cool. Well, I'll have to come down and visit sometime. I hear the mountain biking down there is really good.
Yeah, and the lake's beautiful, the reservoir.
Okay, cool. I'll have to make a journey down that direction once we're fully vaccinated and ready to go.
Right, exactly. There's always that.
Yep, for sure. So you are one of the founders of Mindful Youth Institute, which tell us a little bit about your organization.
Well, we got started at the end of 2019. My husband and I had been wanting to do this for years. And so we got together a group of people that were all interested in helping young people, especially young people with learning problems. Just have a passion for that, trying to find ways that are innovative and cutting edge that'll make a difference in their lives.
Yeah, that sounds great. Are you primarily dealing with kids who have learning disabilities, or are they just having a hard time in school, or is there a particular segment of that group that you help with the most?
Well, we kind of left it to be open to any kind of at-risk kids that are at risk of failing in schools for emotional problems, for they have trouble learning. At this moment, we're starting a campaign for kids that have social emotional problems and bully other kids as a result.
Oh, interesting. So you're working with the kids who would be kind of identified as the perpetrators of that kind of behavior.
Yeah. There really isn't a lot out there that aims directly to help the bully. It's usually stuff, anti-bullying interventions are aimed at helping the victims and the class, but we want to try to change the bully's heart.
Well, I think that sounds like a really interesting place to be spending your time and energy. I don't know a lot about that space, but I certainly do know that I've read things that indicate that a lot of bullying behavior, stems from a lot of other insecurity and other emotional challenges that kids are facing, or even financial and social, etc. So it's cool that you're kind of taking that approach to it.
Yeah, yeah, and what everybody says about it, what the research says is that bullies lack empathy, and so everybody's trying to develop empathy in these kids, and we've got some innovative ideas that we think might be more effective than other ones.
Oh, interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about those, or are they proprietary?
Well, I can tell you them in general. I'll give you a little bit of the story, if that's okay, about why I'm interested in it.
That'd be great.
Well, a lot of stories come to mind, but the one that's most recently in my mind is I went to a school and visited a teacher, and there was this child in the classroom. He was about 7 years old, but he looked like he was 10. You know, he's a tall
Hmm.
kid, and he had these pointy cowboy boots on. And it turns out he wasn't just bullying the other kids, he was also bullying all the adults in his life, his teachers, his mothers, and he would wear these pointy cowboy boots and kick his teacher with them, left bruises
Oh, wow.
all over her legs. I know. And of course, we know teachers don't have a lot of wiggle room about what to do. I was a teacher for a long time, and you can't restrain kids, you can't punish them, it's not okay. So the teacher went to the kid's mom and said, "Could you please, uh, you know, not let him wear those cowboy boots?" And she said the mom said she had no control. And so he kept wearing them. Unfortunately, this kind of thing is not the first time I've seen it. I've seen it just over and over again where bullies aren't just bullying other kids, they're also bullying the teachers and the parents and all the adults around them.
Wow, that's really interesting. I mean, I assume that partially comes from the idea that you do something and it works, so you just that's the thing you pick, and you just do that for the rest of your life. But my guess is that there's some underlying emotional and mental challenges that are going on there as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's about a way to establish power and control over your environment. And and it's also just a lack of being able to see someone else's perspective, what it is you're really doing to other people.
So there is
Um,
an empathy component to the behavior.
yeah, they don't feel it, If you felt it, you wouldn't kick somebody. You'd say, or a normal kid would do it. They'd kick somebody and then they'd realize, "Oh my gosh, this is what I did. I hurt somebody," and they don't want to do it again. But bullies, aggressive kids don't really have that component.
Wow.
So or if they do, it's sort of like the mafia. This is the example I always use. If you've watched The Sopranos or goodness knows how many other mafia shows are out there, if you mess with the mafia member's family, right? They take revenge, and that's their way of responding to empathy.
Right.
You hurt my friend, I'll beat you up. So, but that's not the kind of empathy we want. We want to kind of change their hearts so they actually feel caring for other people.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's obviously a lot of talk about kids who are on the spectrum and how well they receive or yeah, how well they receive kind of training in social signals and things like that. And it sounds like it's a similar, um, maybe a sort of similar challenge.
Yeah, and not picking up signals, or maybe not responding to them, or maybe justifying it, saying, "Well, they deserved it." And so what we want to do is we want to use some innovative technology, some virtual reality, to help get them to first, experience themselves virtually what it's like to be a bully, and then try to use techniques to make them, feel caring for other people. I mean, maybe these kids just don't know what it really feels like to love someone,
Hmm.
what that it's a good feeling.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's cool that you're bringing in technology to into play as well. I think that's kind of something unique I haven't heard about. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, we're looking at virtual reality, and I don't know. Have you ever done virtual reality?
I haven't done. I'm trying to think. It seems like I've done something that had kind of a, a a component of it. I've never worn like the the new glasses and things like that that are super cool, and really kind of drop you into that space. So I guess I haven't really tried that out too much.
Yeah, well, kids are doing it. I saw something at the mall, where kids can go in and do virtual reality, and then you see them, acting kind of strange, but they've got the goggles on and they're hitting at things and
Uh huh.
etc. But it's cool. The little bit that I know about it, it's cool, it's immersive, and of course we wouldn't have kids hitting at things, but we would do it in a way so it's a game for them, it's fun, and it helps retrain their brain so they can learn some self control without having to do, the breathing exercises, the meditation exercises that, I've done a lot of that too. But
Hmm.
these kind of kids will say, it's boring, I don't enjoy it. And so we want to make it fun and interesting for them, kind of hook them in that way. And then, see if we can get them to experience what it feels like to have a compassionate heart.
Ah, that's really cool. Is it kind of like a rewiring of some of those pathways in the kids' brains where they're able to kind of reconnect some things that may have either gotten unconnected at some point or maybe never had the chance to form completely? Is that the um, the physiology of it? I guess.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, the brain is plastic, right? Which means
Hmm.
it can change based on your activity throughout your whole life, which is pretty exciting. So, I mean, these kids don't have the self-regulation circuit. And so you can train that by getting them to focus and getting them to focus on things that, like a kitten, maybe, like
Uh-huh.
to try to break through and try to open their heart a little bit. Everybody's got a soft heart somewhere in there, so we would try to reach it by through images and through exercises. And like you said, if we could teach them how to reach that part of themselves on their own, and they find it rewarding and not boring, then yeah, we are literally changing the circuits in their brain, and that is very cool.
Well, that is awesome. I love that idea, and I think it's really neat that you've been able to kind of take this technology that was certainly, originally designed for entertainment purposes, a lot. I'm sure there's some training purposes and some other things, but you usually hear VR in that realm of entertainment and recreation. So it's cool to be able to take something and repurpose it for this really important. Change that you're helping to facilitate.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And couple years ago, I found out, it was a game. I think it was called "Please Don't Kill the Zombies." And what it did was it was a zombie killing game. We don't want to do anything like that. But in the
Right.
game, they were hooked up to some biofeedback monitors, and so when they were able to calm themselves down, they were able to do cool things like walk through walls or be invisible. Whereas when they were, losing control, the screen would shake and turn red and all kinds of things. So it was a way to motivate them to, self-regulate and breathe. And so that's what we're trying to do is except, use it in a way to show what the victim's experience is like, and, what it's like to do, nice things and things like that. But have it be motivating game like.
Right. That's amazing. And so are you building this technology now, or have you developed it and you're trying to get the word out? Where are you in your life cycle?
Well, we are in trying to get the money so that we can start developing it. We've got a person on our board that knows a lot about tech and about VR, and so what we're looking to do, we just started our first fundraiser, a GoFundMe, and that's what we're trying to do is raise the money for the equipment and then to test to see if develop the intervention and see if it works.
Nice. How much money are you trying to raise, and how close are you to that goal?
We're not close at all. We just launched this. And so we are just starting. And that's why it's so great that you invited me and our organization to be on this show because we want to get the word out. We think it's exciting, but we just launched our GoFundMe campaign and we're looking into other campaigns to get the word out and to get this going.
Gotcha. Um, so have you looked into Google for nonprofits or Google grants at all?
I have recently filled that out, Google for
Okay.
Nonprofits, and I think I am still waiting to hear from them. I filled it out last week.
Okay, perfect. So that's a great place to start. I think, and they keep changing the names of these things. So I'm just going to call it Google Grants or I'm sorry, I'll just call it Google for Nonprofits because I think that's the latest iteration of it. But it's a really great set of tools that Google provides for nonprofits free of charge. And also, they make available up to, I think, $10,000 a month of free advertising. And if you set things up correctly, I believe that you can drive to a page on your site that then talks about your GoFundMe campaign and then links back out to GoFundMe. My understanding, at least the last time I checked, was that there were um, some things that you had to do to jump through the Google for Nonprofits hoops in order to promote an offsite kind of campaign like GoFundMe. But as long as you have a page set up that talks about it and then links back out to it, I think you should be in good shape.
Okay. Yeah. Let me ask you this because I saw that about the ads, and I thought it said in kind, which to me means we'll give you $1 if you've got another dollar from another donor. Dollar for dollar. Is that what that is?
I think it's that they're, at least the last I checked, was that they're actually giving you $10,000 worth of advertising free of charge. So they're not giving you $10,000 to go spend, however you want to spend it. They're giving you $10,000 of their in-kind services to enable you to run ads. But they may have changed that. I don't think they have, but I could be incorrect. I'll have to go check that.
Okay, because that would be very cool. We'd love to spend 10,000 on advertising.
Yeah, my understanding is that's the way that the program has historically run, and I don't think it has changed. So double check that, but that is my understanding of that program.
And would Google Ads be the best way to go? I've also heard about Facebook ads.
Well, so when we talk about advertising, we tend to look at what your target audiences are, and depending upon who you're trying to reach, and this is still holds pretty true today that right now in the nonprofit world, the most lucrative or the most giving from a dollar figure standpoint are still the boomers. So figuring out where boomers go to get information and where they go to engage with things like this is where you're probably going to have the most success. I would say that Facebook would, given that Facebook is still a pretty good venue to do some advertising and promotion in order to reach that audience. So a lot of boomers are still pretty active on Facebook, and it's a good place to get in front of that particular demographic group. If you're looking for someone a little younger, Facebook is still a good place to go. I mean, Facebook kind of is the elephant in the room of social media still. But as your audience changes, you need to start looking at where that type of person would go to get information and engage with an organization like yours. And so, for example, if you're reaching out to Gen Z or millennials, then you might be wanting to play a little bit more solidly in Instagram or TikTok or one of the newer platforms. Typically, when platforms start, they have a younger audience that tends to kind of age up as the platform ages. So, just keeping in mind who your target audience is and making sure that you get in front of them where they go for information. Now, speaking of elephants in the room, Google is kind of the big elephant in terms of search. And the reason why Google for nonprofits is so important and valuable and amazing is that they're basically sponsoring those ads. And so I would say you depending upon what kind of ad you run and how well you segment and target that ad, I would expect your performance to be less through Google, but at the same time, those ads aren't costing you anything. So that's why it tends to be a good go-to place where you can at least test messaging and do some things like that. So I would say that if you were paying for it, I might recommend sticking with Facebook or something like that. But since it's something that's coming to you in the form of a grant through Google, it's essentially free advertising. It makes sense to go ahead and use that service.
Okay. And so getting an ad campaign started. So what do we do?
That's a great That's a great question.
You're talking to someone who's been in education all her life and doesn't know, much about marketing.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first thing I would do is set your goal and have a good understanding of what it is you're trying to get people to do. And for this one, it may be, help fund, help fund this organization's growth and success, to help teach bullies compassion, for example. That seems to be your tagline for the GoFundMe campaign.
Yeah, and I didn't tell you how much. You asked me how much. So right now we're looking at 275,000.
Okay, that's a great goal. And I think it's achievable for sure. So the first thing to do is to just have a great understanding of what you're trying to do in terms of what the end goal is. So funding the campaign or funding the GoFundMe campaign would be the end goal of your advertising. So with that in mind, kind of working back from that, think about what messaging you might need that preys on sounds a little nefarious, but engages people's their feeling center, right? So really gets people to have an emotional kind of response to this situation. And what you can do is if you can craft your ad so that it leads people to say, yes, that I resonate with this, and I'm passionate about helping to create change in this space. Then creating your landing page that the ad points to, and have that landing page be very, very closely tied to that message. So make sure that there's no disconnect between the advertisement and the page that people get to once they've clicked on that advertisement, and then collect as little information as possible in order to drive people to take that action. So like I said, I don't believe Google will allow you to link directly to the GoFundMe page. I think that they will force or ask you to, in order to get the grant, to go ahead and send people to a landing page on your site. So on that landing page, the thing that you need to create is what our friends over at Next After call the value proposition. And that is this idea that most people don't wake up every day trying to figure out how to give away their money. So you have kind of an uphill battle as a nonprofit to get people to give to your organization versus a different organization, or not at all. So in this situation, there's kind of a three-way pull that's going on there. And so if you can create your value proposition that tees up the understanding and gives the messaging around why your organization, above all the others out there trying to do similar work, deserves this person's investment, and or why they shouldn't just keep the money in their pocket. That's what that messaging needs to be on both the GoFundMe campaign as well as on the landing page on your site that then links out to the GoFundMe campaign.
Okay. So since you've heard my story a little bit, what do you think would resonate with people the most about what I've told you?
Well, that's a great question. I think that there are a couple things to me that are probably good places to start. And one is engaging people's fears and concerns for their children, whether their children are bullies or are being bullied. I think that there are a couple powerful emotional pulls that you can levers that you can pull there to really make sure that people have a good understanding of what you're trying to accomplish and why this is important, and what's in it for them. Typically on a website, one of the things that we recommend is having messaging that captures the answers to a couple questions within about 7 seconds. So when you go to a well-optimized page, you'll see this kind of pop up, which is, it answers the questions of who is this for, how does it make their life better, and how do they get it? And so on these landing pages, we certainly would want to facilitate that kind of question and answer in terms of really giving people a good understanding of why they're here and what it is you're hoping to accomplish that makes everybody's life a lot better. And so I think trying to engage with that feeling, because either I would say most of us have either been bullied or have been a bully probably in our lives. There's probably not a lot of gray area there. And so really trying to tap into kind of the emotional state that occurred when either your kid was being bullied or you remember being bullied, or tapping into that kind of empathy in terms of, gosh, I feel really bad for these kids who are going through life with this kind of attitude, or this kind of emotional state that they aren't being able to feel empathy and things like that. And so really just tapping into those emotional feelings would be one of the first things that I would do with your copy and your content.
Okay. All right. So, when I told you my story, did it tap into anything, any feelings?
Well, like I said, I mean, I felt, certainly it immediately threw me back into, junior high, where I think a lot of people feel like they have experienced bullying in that phase of one's life. I don't know if it's just all of the hormones that start to develop at that phase in people's lives, or if there's something else going on. But I just remembered, it certainly put me back into that seat where I can remember being bullied as a kid. But it also tapped in for me in terms of this idea when we were talking about empathy, about how sad that is for kids who aren't, their minds aren't wired in a way that allows them to feel empathy. Because I get a lot of, I get a lot out of my ability to empathize. And so just kind of, I put myself in their shoes a little bit when you were telling me the story, and just thinking about how sad that would be and how amazing it must be for these kids to be able to experience empathy and understand how other people might feel about either their behavior or other things that would affect them. It just seems like it's such a life-changing experience if you were able to transform someone from that that position of being a bully to not being a bully. I think that's probably, just an amazing transformation that someone would be able to experience.
Yeah, yeah, and it's been hard to do. I mean, I've looked at a lot of research, and it's not successful in really changing bullying behavior. It's kind of a mystery. It makes me Your story makes me think of the television show Shameless. Do you know
Hmm.
this show?
I
Are
have
you
watched a little bit of it. Yes.
okay?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Carl on the show?
Carl is one of the younger
Yeah.
boys on the show, right?
Yeah, and he's the one that, he thinks guns are cool and violence
Oh,
is
yep. Yep.
cool. And, he's kind of your, speaking as just a psych person, he's a psych nerd. He's like an antisocial person.
Okay.
And he thinks all these things are cool. And then he ends up going to
Okay.
juvenile detention, and he gets the cornrows in his hair. And he's just, I mean, the actor did a marvelous job. He just looks exactly like a young, kid in juvenile diversion. I mean, he's perfect, like a street kid. And he comes out and he's selling guns in the school and he's selling drugs on the corner. And, everybody predicts he's just going to be in prison for the rest of his life. So he's kind of like one of these kids that we're interested in helping. And then one day he has, not a good experience. He sees somebody killed
Okay.
and a child, and it just changes him. It transforms him. And then he's saying, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to see kids get dropped anymore, to use his
Hmm.
language. And he decides to use his energies to become a police officer. So for me, I just love watching, this kid that just seems to really enjoy, he's a bully at school too, by the way. He slams kids' hands and all these things in the
Uh-huh.
locker, and yet to watch him change and have it be believable, because this show is like a long show, 11 seasons, and just to watch his change from, someone who didn't care, a real tough kid, to somebody who wants to do good. I mean, I love that. That's sort of the vision that I have, of reaching these kids that are so hard to reach, yet, they've got things to offer.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, yeah, just trying to tap into that. And typically when we talk about, so I talked about audiences a little bit, and those can be called avatars or personas, but essentially it's a creation of kind of a semi-fictional representation of who you're trying to reach. So you have a good understanding of what their motivations are, what might inspire them, what challenges they face, etc. So that's typically one of the first steps that we take when we're engaging with a new organization or a new client, is to really help them help us, I guess, get a good understanding of who we're trying to reach. And so in that regard, you could think about the parents of a kid like this. So you told the story of the young kid who was kicking his teacher with the cowboy boots, but tapping into a person who would potentially be able, because a child isn't going to make this decision for themselves. So tapping into somebody who might be able to either recognize their kid in that kind of a story, or see how this could help them overcome some challenge that they're facing in their lives. So, for example, if their child is a bully, helping to fund this research and this programmatic system that helps people transcend that type of behavior. Just framing those asks from that position of how does this make their life better, and really framed in that position of what are their challenges and what are the problems that they're trying to overcome.
And you're doing that to determine your audience, right?
So we do that. We help our clients and other organizations. We help them kind of figure that out if they haven't done so already, or we help them, tell us who those people are, so that we can make our best recommendations in terms of who who we might or where we might recommend that they spend their time and energy and invest their their revenue and their dollars to reach out to different potential users or potential donors, etc.
Yeah, I get that. So it's kind of the age group. What do you think? And the audiences are parents directly. Why would boomers be interested in this? You said they're the biggest
Yeah.
donor.
So boomers are the biggest donor class right now in terms of group that donates the most money, just because that tends to be the case. People tend to donate more money as they get older, and they also tend to have, a lot of them tend to have a little bit more disposable income in terms of they've built up a certain amount of wealth, and they're trying to do some good with it. So a boomer might resonate with this if they have a grandchild, for example, who is being bullied. That might be something that would kind of inspire them to say, I want to participate in this. Or if they are thinking back about things that they regret in their lives, like perhaps they feel like they might fit that bully, type, that they might want to be trying to make amends. So those are a couple of different kind of motivators that might be able to be, accessed in order to encourage someone of that generation to participate in a GoFundMe campaign to to help you guys get farther down the road. So if you think more in the parent perspective, I think you're still thinking about how the person's kids are probably affected, or if they recognize bullying behavior in their own child, and are interested in funding research that might help either their kid or someone like that kid live a better life. I think that those would be some of those challenges that they would want to overcome.
You know, and this might be a little of a switch up of a subject, but I was just looking also for like small business grants or just small grants in Colorado, and I went up and I looked at the Colorado nonprofit organization,
Mm-hmm.
thinking, I'll look up grant guides because it looks like they're out there to help Colorado nonprofits, and so I think you probably have heard of it, Colorado Grants Guide. And that sounds like a great resource. And then you open it up and they want subscription, like $100 a year, or
Mm-hmm.
the foundation one wants $100 a month, that just seems ridiculous. I mean, do you know of a better place to find out about Colorado people that are, organizations and businesses that want to donate?
That's a good question. I think that there is, there is a lot of money out there available, and grants are certainly a really great place to start playing in terms of attempting to access some of those funds. In terms of a list, I'm not sure. I'd have to do a little bit of research on that. But the Colorado Nonprofit Association is actually a really pretty great organization that has a wealth of information for people in the nonprofit space to to be able to access not only training but potentially gain access to vendors or people who could help out with grant writing or helping to do that kind of research. So there is certainly, at least we're a member of the Colorado Nonprofit Association, and so there's certainly dues involved when becoming a kind of a for-profit member of that organization. But I haven't looked into what what the costs are for a nonprofit and what what resources that opens you up to be able to access. It really, when I try to make those decisions, I start to look at how much potential upside is there to an investment in that kind of that kind of a system. Also, is there an opportunity to just, join for a month and try and glean as much information as you can, and then join again later if once one's revenues increase. So really looking to be pretty flexible. Most of these kinds of programs do have a different fee structure for actual nonprofits. So it's probably worth exploring some of those opportunities. But I'll do a little more research into where to go to find grants. I would say that there's probably quite a lot of money out there available for an entity such as yours to get into that grant space.
Yeah, that'd be great. I have experience writing grants, so it's not a problem. I know that Walmart tends to they have a program, and you go through some steps to answer questions about your nonprofit and your mission, and then they use a separate, I don't know, vendor, separate business or whatever to verify that information,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can apply for up to 2,500 uh, um, 25 times a year, same organization, 25 times. So
Oh, wow.
we're going to give that a try and see.
Yeah.
Because we would like to use it to try to, get some advertising. I've done the Google for nonprofits, and we'll see
Right.
what they have to offer. But I like to write a little bit just so that we have maybe some money for Facebook advertising.
Right. Right. I think Facebook would probably be a pretty good place for you to play. Certainly there are a number of groups on Facebook that you could join. That my guess is I don't have kids, so this bullying isn't top of mind for me in terms of stuff I'm researching all the time. But my guess is that there would be groups on Facebook that would talk about that. So getting active in those kinds of groups, or being able to target ads to those types of groups, I think would be a place that I would start to play. One thing that's really nice about Facebook advertising is that it does give you a ton of granularity in terms of who you're targeting that ad to.
And can you explain what that means?
Yeah, so you can get very, very specific in terms of your audience. So if you wanted to target, for example, school teachers, which might not be a bad group to target, Facebook tends to have a lot of information about their users, including sometimes they can have how much money people make, the types of things that people buy, the types of groups that they're active in, age, location, etc. So there are ways to really hyper target ads against a certain group in Facebook. And what tends to happen is, as you get more and more specific in your targeting, your cost per reach or cost per click tends to go up for Facebook. So one of the tactics that we have deployed in the past is to start out really broad and get an ad that is, I'm just going to say good enough that, don't spend a whole bunch of time or energy really trying to fine tune your ad. Just get something that you're like, yeah, that's worth a shot. Let's give that a whirl. And then distribute that to a fairly wide audience. So for example, if you were looking for just people in Colorado, or if you were really looking for just people kind of in Pueblo, you might try and toss that ad out to cast a wider net, because your cost per view is going to go down. And what you'll find is you'll get some data out of the performance of that ad. So, let's say it gets sent out to 100,000 people, and 1,000 people either click on it or view it or whatever metric you're looking for. But let's say 1,000 people click it. So now you have some really good targeted information about that 1,000 people. And so you can start to look for similarities within that group. And now you can hyper target that same ad to kind of cast a wider net around that specific group target. So maybe expand that to outside of Colorado, but with those specific demographics, and you have a higher level of confidence that that same ad is going to resonate with that group outside of the state as well, for example, or outside of the Pueblo area, for example. So it just allows you to leverage the advertising itself to get data on how your ad plays with a certain demographic.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, and Google has the ability to drill down quite a bit too. They tend to cast a much wider net. I would say, like I said earlier, I think that you'll probably would be able to see improved performance with Facebook ads, but obviously the cost is a lot lower when your advertising is free on Google.
Sure, sure. Yeah, well, this past year I've also gone into social media, sort of a lot of people do it, I think, as a way of free advertising. But I'm learning to engage with people so that,
Mm,
I'm able to ask questions that people answer. I've just started learning that, but
yeah.
LinkedIn and Instagram are the main two that I've got right now. I haven't ventured into Facebook yet.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think well, I love to hear that that's how you're approaching social media. So many people, and we actually just wrote a blog post about this, but so many people kind of see social as a one-way street. So they tend to use it as kind of a you know kind of just getting out and with a bullhorn and shouting
Yeah.
one's accolades or whatever you want to say. And, social media is all about relationship building, and relationships are the best relationships at least tend to be two-way streets. And
Yeah.
so making sure that you're engaging with people on their pages, asking questions, answering questions, being curious, going out and trying to expand your network, from a more manual standpoint, as opposed to just assuming that people are going to somehow find you and join the conversation, but really trying to engage with people that you think might be good people to have in your community. Really leveraging social for to harness the power that it has built into itself in terms of conversation starting, is really important, and a lot of people miss that mark. They just go out and put out their latest press release and think that that's the way that social works, and it's really is an engagement you know avenue or channel.
Yeah, yeah, it is, and it's sort of interesting to watch how people try to engage with me. So, for example, some people will just try over and over and over, and I find that really annoying. And it seems to me a really bad strategy is just, if people don't want to answer you the first time, you let it go. But to keep pestering someone just seems like a bad tactic.
Well, I think it is about it's about creating value and exchanging value and building trust. And we like to say that marketing is all about relationship building. And whether that's convincing someone to buy a 75-cent widget, or trying to get somebody to donate thousands of dollars to your campaign, it really does kind of start with this idea that we need to develop a relationship. And so if you think about the majority of the relationships that one has in one's life, they rarely start with "Hi, my name's Stu. Can you give me some money?"
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it's usually there's usually a back and forth. What's your name? How are you today? And just creating those opportunities for back and forth. And so what we recommend is, when you start outreach, is temper your desire to jump to the ask immediately, and really invest some time in building that relationship and building that trust. And a lot of times that's about value exchange. And so one of the things that I would think you would be able to do pretty pretty effectively, pretty immediately, is developing some materials that help people who maybe have a kid who is displaying some bullying behavior, or have a kid who's been the victim of that kind of behavior. Just give them some tips on how to manage that and how to deal with either of those situations. And so essentially you could create, a 1 or 2 page document, a PDF or something like that, that gave some tips for handling, let's just use the child who's displaying bullying behavior as an example. So create a PDF that gives some tips to parents who suspect that their child might be a bully. Put the ask out there, say, hey, if you're interested in this, go to this place on our site. When they get to that place on the site, explain what the thing is that you're hoping to share with them, and ask them to say, hey, where can we send your guide? And so that tees them up for the understanding of why you're asking for their email address, and maybe asking for their first name and email address. And then when they provide that information to you, send them to a landing page where you vend that material. So basically have the PDF on the landing page. And then at that same time, ask them to support your GoFundMe or your GoFundMe campaign, or to donate in some other fashion. You've just created the opportunity where they have a little bit of a feeling of indebtedness to you. And so it's a good time to just, do kind of what we call an instant ask for a donation. At the same time, you've now collected that information, and they are in your email list now. And so send them an email immediately that says, hey, in case you missed it on our site, here's that, that guide about how to handle your child if you think he's a bully. And then you can either, ask them if they'd like to participate more to help out, or you can also now email them in a week or something and just say, hey, just wanted to check in and see if you had any questions about the guide that we sent you. And now you're on that path of relationship building. You're creating back and forth opportunities, and you've demonstrated that you want to help them. And so that's just a really, really good way to start to build that list and build those connections that are going to provide you the ability to succeed long term.
Yeah, I love it. I've been trying to start a business in working with coaching kids. Don't want to really get sidetracked on that, but I did use Mailchimp, and I just, I had questions about, whether their kid was anxious or not.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't effective. I had a lot of trouble with Mailchimp getting it started. Do you have another? Mailchimp does one ask, or one, I don't know what they call it. They do one free, and then you have to pay for it.
Hmm.
And there was a lot of problems with it, a lot of technological problems. Uh, uh, do you use Mailchimp, or do you use something else to get a mailing list going?
Well, we have used MailChimp in the past internally, and then an awful lot of our clients use MailChimp just because it, at least the last time I checked, their policy was a certain number of sends per month. And so let's just say that was 1,000. I think it might have been 2,000 sends. So if you had a list that had 2,000 people on it, you could send to that list one time. Or if you had a list of 500 people, you could send 4 individual messages to that list, or any kind of permutation of that led up to a couple thousand sends per month. They then at that point do start charging for that service. So if you're talking about email, I have had really good luck with Mailchimp. The other kind of big guy in the room is Constant Contact, which is another service. I think Constant Contact may charge earlier than Mailchimp, or maybe not even have a free service. I can't remember, but both are fairly reasonable in terms of costs for bulk mail sends, particularly if you're using the system. If you're
Okay.
talking about surveys, asking people questions and to fill out a survey, there are a couple different platforms that we would recommend. And the first is actually Google. You can create when you signed up for Google for nonprofits,
Yeah.
um, they, I'm sure, gave you access to their kind of suite of apps and tools that you can use as a nonprofit to do things like create surveys. So it's called Google Forms, I believe, is what they're still calling it. But it's a pretty straightforward mechanism to allow you to create forms that let you ask questions and collect data and get analytics on those data. The other option is called Surveymonkey. And I don't know the costs of Surveymonkey, but again, they probably have some either a nonprofit program or some kind of free engagement opportunity there if you're looking to do surveys.
They do. I use SurveyMonkey in my dissertation. So they have a nice free part of it. But how do you get people to answer these surveys? If I see a survey, I just skip it. How do you get people to answer it?
Right. Well, I think that goes back to the relationship building. When you have a relationship with a person, when you've provided value to that person, they tend to want to go out of their way to help you out, and particularly if it's not a very heavy lift, like we're looking for experiential information, and would love to get an understanding of your experience with bullying or challenges that you've seen, either in your students or with your child, in terms of learning challenges and things of that nature. Once you've established that relationship, once you've started to build that trust, then people, usually, you start to see a group of people from the whole group come out and raise their hands and say, I want to help.
Okay.
And so it's really, I think, consistency and really trying to create value exchange.
Let me ask you. Probably this is the final question, but so if a person writes me and they want to talk to me about their kid, and their kid's got some trouble at school, and I've made the mistake of jumping directly to the ask, right? And then I don't
Mhm.
hear from them. What do you recommend? How long? I mean, this is through, social media. This is through messaging. I
Right.
mean, how long? When do you ask? When do you know?
That's a really great question. Um, and I think that just paying attention is kind of the first step to that. And as you have more conversations, you'll see, oh, if I ask before, the third time we've, gone back and forth, then people tend to go away. Um, so I think you'll get a feel for it. It's different for every organization. There's not necessarily a magic number, in terms of you need to have sent 7 emails before you ask them for a donation. There, a lot of times people are ready more quickly, and then some people are never going to be ready. But what I think I would do is try to figure out ways to um, kind of scale or streamline the information that you provide. I bet you probably get kind of some of the same questions over and over again, would be my
Uh-huh.
guess, right? And so creating an FAQ or creating materials that answer those specific questions, whether those be blog posts um, or PDFs of like a little bit longer form, but basically just creating materials that you can share fairly quickly. That tends to help. Not only is it scalable because you get the same question 5 times, so 5 times a week, so you probably don't have to type it out 5 times. You can, type it once, create something that answers that question. And then the next time someone says, hey, how do I handle this? You say, oh, you know what? We wrote a blog post about that. Let me send you that link. And then you follow up with them and say, hey, how was that helpful? And what else can I help you with? Is there any other information I can provide? And essentially you're positioning yourself as someone who just wants to help. And from there, you can expand that into, I've helped you, how about you help me? And certainly not every person is motivated in the same way. And so, not everyone is going to become a donor, even after you've provided them with a very valuable resource or tool or information. But just embracing the idea that you're there to help and coming at it from that position of, would you like more help with that? Would you like to know how I can help more? Getting yeses to things before you provide that information, or maybe before you provide an ask that's the hard ask, like donate to us or hire me to be a consultant. Getting buy-in that people actually would like your help first, that can be super effective as well.
Okay. That's really helpful.
My
That's very
pleasure.
helpful. You've given me a lot of ideas, Stu. Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I can't believe it's been an hour. It seems like we just started our conversation. So it's
I
been
know.
super fun talking with you. How can people find out more about your organization?
Well, they can go to our website, mindfulyouthinstitute.org. Um, and then that's the main place. I would go there, or to my LinkedIn if you just look me up.
Okay.
You can look up Julia Keller, Mindful Youth Institute. You'll find me. And we also have a company page on LinkedIn called Mindful Youth Institute if you wanted to look there.
Fantastic. Well, I will share all of those links in the show notes as well. And are there any other resources? I know we're kind of talking about a little bit of a touchy subject with bullying. Are there any other resources that you would want people to be aware of if they needed help with bullying?
Oh, off the top of my head, no. I like your idea to write a little sheet with information about how to handle it. Um, that's something I want to do.
Okay, cool. Well, I have really enjoyed talking with you today. And one of the things that I like to do on all of my shows is not just talk, but give people something to act upon. And so if people were to take any action today, whether that's, go give your mom a hug or, get outside to enjoy the sun or whatever it is, what would you want people to do after listening to our show today?
Uh, well, I like your idea about just having some time for yourself that's relaxing, where you can breathe and just, reconnect to the world around you, to the earth. Something I like to do when I go for a walk is I just like to feel my feet on the ground. My head's all whirling and swirling, and you know how it is. And I just think about my feet on the ground, and I feel grounded. And so I'd recommend that for all of us busy people.
I love it. I think I'm going to take that to heart and see how I can do that for the rest of the day today.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you being on the show. That was a super fun conversation. Julia Keller, thanks so much.
Thank you, Stu.
All right, there you have it. Another great episode of Relish This. Thanks for listening. If you would like to learn more about how to apply the audience engagement cycle to expand your organization's mission, there are 2 things you can do. Right now, you can go to missionuncomfortablebook.com to download a copy of my book. And while you're there, you can get your purpose-driven marketing score to see where you can unearth some gold for your organization. If you'd like to listen to back episodes of the show or sign up to be a guest, go to relishstudio.com/podcast. That's it for this week. I'll be back next week for another great episode of Relish This.